Access to social media is making fighting within the religious community easier.
We ought not scapegoat social media as the basis of our inhumanity.
The American Religious Town Hall is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
Welcome to the American Religious Town Hall. I'm James Weingartner in for Jerry Lutz, and we're having another COVID edition of the American Religious Town Hall with fewer panelists, more spaced out. And we're hoping that this COVID is treating you well and not infecting you. And we'd like for our prayers and our blessings to be with you on that. Our panelists today are anxious to share this important topic with you. And before we do that, we'd like to introduce them to you. Tom?
I'm Tom PLUMBLEY. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. Our congregation is a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
I'm Bishop Michael Olson, and I am the Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas.
Hi, I'm Carl Trovall. I'm Professor of Ethics and History at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
My name is Rabbi Dan Levin. I serve as Senior Rabbi at Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, Florida.
And now for our important topic. Are members at your religious organization fighting online also? If so, you're not alone. Pastor John J. Alvaro writes, social media is also making it harder to love your church members. Online activities built to amplify whatever spreads fastest and farthest. Guess what does that? Negative emotional comment. In a politically charged environment, along with unprecedented racial unrest, should religious leaders and members work to bring the world together rather than add fuel to the fire? Why are we seeing such venom on social media among those affiliated with religious organizations? The Daily Universe cites a Brigham Young University professor named Sarah Coyne who asks, the lack of face-to-face interaction online makes commentators more comfortable with being rude to people with opposing views. She further states that you have to have that barrier of the internet that you can use to often say things that you would never ever say to somebody's face. Coyne also points to the fact that internet fights often break out between strangers. You're much more likely to say inflammatory or mean things to that person because there's a very low level of investment in that particular relationship. The article also states that Coyne said that she's concerned about the growing political divide in the country and especially among members of the church. Social media is part of the reason for that increased polarization because people are less likely to take the time to understand the other's perspective or opinion on an issue and likely to try to defend their own opinion on social media. Here are a few questions for our panelists to ponder. In your view, what's the real problem? Social media or the people that use it? 2, what can be done to slow down or prevent feuding online among members of religious organizations? And 3, are there any scriptures that we could examine to consider this topic? So we begin our discussion with Tom again.
Thank you. I guess I want to talk about 3 different things. One is loneliness, and the second is algorithms, and the third is investment. First, I guess I also want to say that there is still a lot of fighting that goes on offline. So we don't need to get the idea that religious fights or fights within faith communities are all just online. But it does provide a vehicle for that kind of disharmonious behavior. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention predicts that in this year there will be a 45,000 increase in suicides in the United States just in this year of COVID. And there will be 25 times that more attempted suicides because of the loneliness that we feel from being more and more separated from each other. And that loneliness, I think, is also seen in the aggressive behavior that we see with each other online. Secondly, algorithms. Folks, algorithms are the mathematical structures that create our social media platforms. They are built, first, social media platforms are built to compete. They are built to make money for those who own them, and that is a competitive business. You need advertisement to do that. To fuel and to get advertisement, you've got to convince the people that are buying it that more people watch your or on your platform for a longer period of time. How do you do that? Well, you find out what views you or I, any of us, are interested in, what views we have, and the algorithms are then built to feed me the information that upholds the views that I have, tells me about the things that I'm interested in from the point of view that I want to listen to, and is less concerned about showing me dissenting opinions, except to show how they're defeated or conquered. And that feeds into this siloing effect that we refer to so often, where we don't listen to each other because we literally exist in different worlds with different fact sets. The third point, investment. We have to break out of that and be more invested in each other. In part of the moderator's statement, you mentioned that in social media relationships, often we can get in fights with strangers because we don't have much invested in that relationship. We solve that, we make that better, we create more harmony by becoming more invested in real relationships with people that we are going to see later, that we are going to look at face to face, or to take those strangers and treat them differently, as if we were going to meet them someday face to face.
Dan?
So I think that Tom is absolutely right that the algorithms that social media creates feed us a bubble, so to speak, that puts us with people that tell us what we already want to know and validates what we want to hear. But the whole project of religious life is about restraining passion. People are supposed to feel passion. They're supposed to be energized. They're supposed to have what in Hebrew is called hit lahavut, where your inner flame is fired. But the whole project of religion is to take all that passion and say, channel it, restrain it, focus it, hone it, use it only for good. And so while I think that there are plenty of things about social media that sometimes bear down or entice our passions outside of the boundaries of the holy and the good, it's lazy for us as moral individuals to blame the technology. Because I will tell you that I think, especially in this time of COVID, when we have been so separate from each other, and social media for a lot of people has been a godsend. It's allowed people to maintain relationships with family and friends, some from as far back as high school and as people you've met recently. There are people who I knew briefly for a short time in my life when I had an internship in college that I now keep up a very close relationship with through social media because I see what they write and I see what's going on with their families and I hear what their opinions are on various different subjects. Social media is a tool. And we have to decide as moral individuals what kind of people we want to be in whatever setting we find ourselves, whether it's an interpersonal setting or an online setting, a virtual setting, or a social media setting. Religion has taught through the centuries that you need to cultivate humility and forbearance and curiosity and decency. And we need to use the same moral guidelines that we would have in any encounter when we put ourselves online. And when we don't, that moral failure is not because of Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. It's what's going on inside of us.
Very good. Thank you, Michael.
Sure, very good topic. I agree that certainly you don't blame the technology as a scapegoat for human behavior. I think, though, the underlying human issue here that comes to mind as I'm listening is accountability and human accountability. First of all, on the personal level, there's a sense of, just an anecdote, I had, as a bishop, there was a couple people who were just upset with what was going on in the church, and I ran into them after they had I ran into them just in the course of events of being a bishop, and they, and I said, what's bothering you about this issue? And they said, well, I'm fine. And I said, well, no. I said, you've got 5 posts on Twitter about this. Oh, you saw that? And I'm like, Bulgaria saw it. I mean, it's Twitter, I mean, it's and so there's a sense of accountability that lacks it. There's a veneer of anonymity, which is a personal mindset. And I think when we go into human relations, whatever they are, whatever the means are for bringing that about, and we start with this premise of anonymity as a place to hide, I think that leads us into moral trouble, whatever sin or vice you want to pick on that. The other thing is, I think, a general accountability that comes. It seems historically we face the same sort of challenges of accountability at the Industrial Revolution, where you had monopolies and really dominating human beings and family life, and while uprooting society, etc. There was very little accountability at first for these barons who were able to dominate American life, our political life, buy and sell politicians, etc. And I think we were able to address that over 120 years ago with a greater sense of regulation and accountability. And I think the same is really upon us right now when it comes to big tech, the accountability, because communication always requires some form of structure. All right, and in the more transparent it can be, including especially the structures of accountability, the better the communication and the less prone, though it's never fail-safe, but the less prone it is to manipulation and disinformation.
Carl, I believe you have a unique view of some of this social media stuff.
Well, yeah, because I'm not on it.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, that's why I want to push back a little bit, because while I'm generally accept the premise that it's humans behind that can take any tool and misuse it, I still think that social media offers a temptation that people can't really turn down. It's more like a drug than it is a tool. I can use a hammer to kill someone, or I can use it to build a shelter for a homeless person. And that hammer isn't beckoning at me all the time, though. Unfortunately, the algorithms, I just think that it's set up against us, and that we have to be very conscious and to teach each other about the appropriate ways to set that technology aside in some way. I wouldn't say ban it. I'm not in favor. I just want us to be aware of the seductive nature of it. I mean, it's like, let's just say in your TV set at home, a lot of us eat and then we go watch TV or whatever we do. What if we turned our TV sets around to face the wall and we had to actually plug it in and pull it out and set it up every time we wanted to watch a TV show? I can guarantee we'd probably watch a lot less TV, because I think the TV isn't a neutral instrument. I think it actually beckons us in a particular way in this siren call. So I'm going to push back a little bit on that. I think it is seductive and has power in the way that it's being used, and hence it makes its kind of, the great things it does makes it better, and the terrible things it does makes it worse.
Reverend Plumbley?
And yes, I love the notion of the technology itself being a siren call. I would add to that it hides us from being able to recognize our own behavior. We do not recognize that we are bullies, for instance. If we were to see it in a kid in the hallway in school, we would recognize bullying. When we come home from school and sit down and type something out on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or whatever that says things in the same tone, treats people in the same way that that kid in school that we saw was bullying, we don't recognize that in ourselves. And so part of what we're lacking, it's amazing that we could be saying this, because this is not new technology. This has been around now for a while. But maybe we're getting to the point where we can learn to recognize, or we can be taught to recognize what we're actually doing and saying. It is, yes, some about it allows me to say it and hide, but some of it is that it allows me to say it and not even know that I'm what I'm saying, right, or how I'm saying what I'm saying.
It's all very good points. Bringing it a little bit back to the idea of the religious community and the infighting within it, what I've noticed, at least in the Catholic world, and I don't think this is unique, but with regard to social media in the Catholic world, there are certain figures who've they require conflict in order to sell their product. Mm-hmm. And they remind me of sort of arms profiteers within the church. I mean, where it's like, get out there and it's, okay, we're for Pope Francis, we're against Pope Francis, we're mad at the USCCB, we're for the USCCB, there's this issue and that issue. And while they're talking to each other, they're also just spinning rancor and fomenting discord. But they're selling something, all right? And I think that's very destructive, and it adds the point of scandal when it hides behind the veneer of religion.
And I think that, those kinds of wars, as you try to describe them, Bishop, are as old as time itself. You just find different media platforms. If you go back 70 years, Joe McCartney was using the newspaper. He would have loved Twitter, but he didn't have Twitter, right? What was he looking for? He was looking to be incendiary. He was looking to get the validation of people because they were fired up and said, I'm with you. And so I think it is in many ways sort of a new veneer on an old problem, which is How ready are we to dehumanize someone who disagrees with us? How willing are we to push ourselves to see the human being behind that other opinion? And if we're unwilling to see the human being behind that other, it doesn't matter what platform we're on, we're going to hurt somebody. And the things that I see in my congregation and in my social media universe are the ways in which people will say such dehumanizing things when they disagree with someone. They don't take the time to say, well, let me tell you why I think your argument is wrong. Let me tell you why I think you're a lesser human being. And to me, that just diminishes God's light no matter where it is. And that's what I think we need to push back against. We need to be champions for virtue again, and then social media will solve itself.
Thank you. Let's move to a break.
We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you and today's closing statements.
Pastor Lutz really does read all of your communications, and we love to have your communications. And so this important subject is fascinating to me. We've had some humor, and we really appreciate that. We'd love to hear your summations now, beginning with Tom.
Thank you. I'm reminded of the passage in Mark 1 where Mark tells the story, much briefer story of Jesus in the wilderness than some of the other Gospels tell it. He simply says that Jesus was driven, after his baptism, was driven into the wilderness, but angels ministered to him. We need to understand ourselves as angels ministering to each other in difficult times. Someone brighter than I and more profound than I has said, we will become happier and less polarized when we become the kind of neighbors we wish we had.
Beautiful. Carl?
I've been reminded in this conversation about St. Paul and Corinth. I'm always amazed that that's even a part of the New Testament, that you have all these conflicts that are already arising in the early church. And so his constant call for people to be at peace with one another, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with one another. And I think it's about self-reflection and thinking about what the impact is that we're doing, and to continue to encourage people to do that so that we love one another.
Thank you, Carl. Dan?
There's a passage in the Talmud, in the collection of wisdom writing called Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the fathers, and one passage says, "B'makom she'ein anashim hishtadel lehiyot ish," which means in a place where no one is acting like a human being, strive to be humane. And I think that we need to always have at the forefront of our consciousness, how can I be exactly the kind of person that you described, the neighbor I wish I had, the agent for goodness in the world. And because we don't champion virtue much anymore, and we don't teach the importance of things like humility and curiosity and forbearance, but it's all about how many clicks can I get, we find ourselves acting inhumanely in spaces that are supposed to be humane.
Thank you, Dan. Bishop Olson?
Just following up on that, the scripture that comes to mind is from the prophets of, treat the alien and the stranger among you with respect, because you were once strangers and aliens in a land. I think if we maybe approach the world of social media and use this metaphor as a place where we're all strangers and aliens, there might be more respect. I think there's a veneer of familiarity with Twitter that's just in other social media outlets, which can be deceptive. and which can play to the addictive passions within all of us, that can give us, instead of a sense of freedom, a sense of license, when in fact our moral character and our virtue that's required of us is, as has been mentioned, humility, and as well as prudence. And also I'd add justice as far as that's concerned. Accountability requires, first of all, not only love, but respect for my neighbor. That somebody out there who we don't really know more of except through their postings are just like us. And so I would add just simply that accountability has to come into the world of social media, not only as a means, but as a place by which we communicate. We need that exemplified by our leaders, as well as by everyone who enters into it.
Thank you, Michael. You know, it's interesting to me, we have a scripture in the New Testament that we read over and over. It says, turn the other cheek if someone slaps you on the right cheek. And I've always read that as, is that a command to pacifism, or what is that? And I realized recently that a slap on the cheek is not a fight. A slap on the cheek is an invitation to a fight. And I think what social media does in its algorithms is invites us to a fight. It begs us to engage in ways that are just as incendiary as can be. And Jesus specifically said, if somebody slaps you on the cheek, don't rise to the fight. If we could treat each other, as the bishop said, treat each other, as Carl said, as the neighbor we want to be. What a beautiful message. What a beautiful.
That was Tom's.
That was Tom's? Okay, very good. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America, we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. Now, friends, until next week at the same time and the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. May the God of all of us bless all of you.